All right, let's talk about something fascinating. What if all that mess, the disorganization, the daydreams that we're always told we need to fix, what if they're actually signs of a brilliant mind at work? Let's dig into that.
So, let me ask you this. Have you ever been told to just get focused when your mind starts to wander? Or maybe you've looked at your own messy desk and had that sinking feeling like, am I just a disorganized person? If any of that sounds familiar, you are in exactly the right place, and you might be in for a really pleasant surprise.
Because what if I told you that these things we call flaws, they're not weaknesses at all? What if they're actually just side effects? Little clues that point to a super intelligent, super creative mind that's just, well, it's hard at work. That's the wild idea we're going to explore today. So first up, let's just totally re-examine these so-called bad habits. We're going to look at why society tends to label them one way and why science is beginning to see them in a completely different and frankly much more exciting light.
I mean, think about it, right? Our culture is kind of obsessed with order, with tidiness, with this idea of linear focus, a clean desk, a perfectly checked off to-do list. These are treated like virtues. So naturally, messiness and a mind that wanders get dismissed as laziness or, a lack of discipline.
But here's where it gets really, really interesting. There's a whole body of research that's starting to suggest the complete opposite, that these exact same traits might just be the unintentional byproducts of a brilliant mind, a mind that's simply too busy dealing with much more important things. And that brings us right to the heart of it all. What are your brain's real priorities? Let's dive into the science of what a brilliant mind is actually up to when it looks like it's being unfocused or disorganized. Okay, so the first key is something called abstract thinking. This is the real heavy lifting for your brain. It's grappling with big, complicated ideas, with theories, with possibilities that don't even exist in the physical world. It's all about seeing the entire forest, not just tidying up each individual tree. Next, we've got cognitive flexibility. This is basically your brain's agility. It's the power to jump between different ideas, to look at a problem from 10 different angles, and to connect things that seem totally unrelated. It is the exact opposite of that rigid, one-track thinking. And finally, there's independent cognitive processing. Now this is the real hallmark of an innovator. It's that tendency to just forge your own mental path, to solve problems in a way that maybe nobody else has even thought of, instead of just following the instruction manual. And this really gets to the core of the trade-off, doesn't it? When a mind is firing on all cylinders, doing that high-priority work, connecting ideas, solving huge problems, innovating, well, the routine stuff like keeping a perfectly tidy desk just falls way down the list. It becomes mental clutter that actually gets in the way of the real work.
Okay, let's look at our first case study. The classic, the infamous, messy desk. We're going to look at it not as a sign of chaos, but as a potential launch pad for creativity.
We've all heard some version of this quote, right? Usually as kind of a joke. But what if there's a real kernel of truth in there? I mean, think of Albert Einstein, Mark Twain. Their desks were legendary for being chaotic. So is a desk that's cluttered with projects and books actually a sign of a mind that's just brimming with ideas? So here's the argument, and it's actually backed by some pretty cool research. A study from the University of Minnesota found that people in messy rooms actually came up with more creative ideas than people in tidy rooms. First, a messy space can help shatter that conventional, rigid thinking. Second, seeing unrelated stuff next to each other might spark new connections. But the most important point is the third one. A messy desk is often just the result of someone prioritizing their flow state, their train of thought over physical tidiness. The work is just too good to interrupt. All right, now for case study number 2. One that probably hits even closer to home for a lot of us, the wandering mind. Let's try to reframe daydreaming, not as a lack of focus, but as a form of really deep thinking. Oh man, how many of us heard this constantly in school, or maybe even at work? It's that classic reprimand that paints daydreaming as the enemy of getting things done. But what if the exact opposite is true? See, when your mind wanders, it's not empty, it's exploring. Neuroscientists actually have a name for this, the default mode network. And it's absolutely crucial for that abstract thinking, for planning for the future. It's a type of independent cognitive processing, just chewing on problems in the background. This is where so many of those aha moments come from, when your brain suddenly connects the dots in a way you never expected. So, where does all this leave us? Well, it leads to a whole new perspective on what intelligence even looks like. One that encourages us to maybe embrace our inner genius, messy desk, wandering mind, and all. And really, this is the big takeaway. True brilliance is not about maintaining some facade of superficial perfection. It's not about having the cleanest desk in the office or the most focused stare in a meeting. It's about a mind that has its priorities absolutely straight, a mind that's laser-focused on what really, truly matters, generating, connecting, and developing big ideas.
So I'll leave you with this one final thought. The next time you look at your cluttered workspace, or you catch your mind drifting off somewhere amazing during a boring meeting, don't rush to judge yourself. Instead, maybe just ask this: which of your so-called bad habits are you now going to choose to see as a strength?